Hello and happy Monday to everyone. Thank you for joining me on this Monday afternoon. I attempted this live last Friday and didn't get to actually uh, do it its full due on account of the fact that I was kind of short on time and then I kept having camera issues. So hopefully, this live goes a bit better. Let me try to do this. Lower that. That should be better. Yeah, that's better. Let me take this off. Alrighty. So, the title of today's show is Not Your Average Black Conservative. And, just to preface today's topic, um, I'll say some of the things that I said last week, which is that when it comes to American politics, uh, particularly as it relates to ethnicity and so on, it's very interesting that, what I mean, when you look at the so-called um, black vote is going to be typically Democrat. And so it's very likely that if a person were to look at a black person, if a non-black person were to look at a black person, you can pretty much assume that that black person is a Democrat or is a socialist or whatever the case may be. As I pointed out, pertaining to the Cato Institute study, which shows that the majority of black people favor socialism over capitalism. Black folks are the only ethnic group in America to favor socialism over capitalism by a large margin, significantly large margin. No other ethnic group comes close, and so it's one of those things where everybody hates stereotypes, but at the same time, stereotypes come out of a thing that is generalizable by virtue of the fact that a majority of a certain people group do a certain thing a certain way, and so these are where generalizations come from. These are where stereotypes come from. We like to decry stereotypes is to ignore reality. And what I mean by that is, again, like in a society where it is wrong to point out the obvious, where it is wrong to say the thing that no one else is willing to say, even though that thing is true. Um, the improperness of calling out a stereotype or believing a stereotype is part and parcel of this kind of be kind culture in which we now find ourselves. But the fact of the matter is, so many black voters vote a certain way that, what I mean, if you were to see a black person walking down the street on their way to the polls to vote, uh, if you were to guess that that black person was voting for a Democrat, you will probably be right. And this is just unfortunately where we are. Last night, on our Cutting Through the Culture episode, we went live in like 3 or 4 different platforms. We went live on YouTube, of course, also Rumble, Facebook, and IG, Blanche Robinson's IG. Now, what's interesting about it is, I rarely go and look at the comments on Rumble just because there's not a lot of traffic over there. But, I decided to go look at, some of the comments that came through on the Rumble account. There were all of like 3 comments. And one of the comments was from someone who said something to the effect of, I have no interest in watching this video. You're naive and foolish if you believe that that socialism is the answer to racism. Now, of course, they didn't actually watch the video, and they said that they have no interest in watching the video. And then they answered the question by saying the same things that we were saying inside the video. But when you look at the thumbnail of the actual video, you see 4 black folks, myself, Keisha, Chuck, and Blanche, right? 4 black folks on the screen. And then in the middle of it is a caption, will socialism or what did we title the show? Is socialism the answer to racism? So naturally, somebody who doesn't know who I am, the kind of things that I talk about, who Keisha is, who Blanche is, who Chuck is, the kind of things that they talk about, they don't know us. We're just another black face in the crowd. And to see the caption, is race or is socialism the answer to racism? Naturally, that person is going to think that we are advocating for socialism being the answer to racism. And so, of course, you get the comments of like, "Oh, y'all are foolish if y'all think that socialism is the answer to racism. I'm not going to watch your videos." Like, okay, you don't have to watch my video. I mean, there's literally billions of videos on YouTube and Rumble. You can watch anything you want, right? If you choose not to watch me, I'm still going to sleep fine at night. I promise you. I promise you that. So on the one hand, like, you know what I mean? The guy is a fool, whatever. But at the same time, I understand where he's coming from when the majority of black people vote a certain way and think a certain way. Like I understand it. You know what I'm saying? And so again, it just is what it is, as the cool kids would say. So I wanted to play this clip. I played this clip last time, and I'll preface it by saying this. So a few years ago, this was either before or after the 2016 election, I was asked to join a group of black Republicans to show up to an area in Dallas where they have a lot of Confederate statues. And we were being asked to speak in favor of protecting the statues and against taking the statues down. And I decided not to participate. And the reason I decided not to participate is because I don't have a dog in that race. And the reason I don't have a dog in that race is because I am a Christian. And as a believer, I believe firmly that we aren't supposed to have or erect or celebrate graven images. So there's a lot of people that I like in history. I like Thomas Jefferson. I like George Washington. I like Dr. J.H. Jackson. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a lot of people that I like, but I'm not going to go out of my way to create some kind of statue or celebrate some kind of statue that pays homage to such men, because Christ is king as far as I'm concerned. And I don't even believe in paintings of Jesus or anything like that. Like I don't like no. I am very clearly instructed as a Christian to not celebrate graven images, to not have graven images. And so, you know what I mean? That's where I stand. At the same time, I'm not going to go around America advocating that each statue be taken down. Like I'm just not going to do it. The reason I'm not going to do it is because, you know what I mean, America doesn't profess to be a Christian nation. These towns, these cities where they have these statues up, they don't claim to be Christian towns. The people that live there probably aren't Christian. And so they are like all that you see in the way of their art, their culture, their relics, their monuments, things of this nature are indicative of the fact that they are pagans, that they are a pagan nation, that they are a pagan town or city, that they are a pagan state, right? I went to Washington, D.C. last year with um, the director of Uncle Tom and Uncle Tom 2, Justin Malone. Him and I went to Washington, D.C. because we were going to be interviewed on, well, not interviewed. We were participating in Timcast. We were invited to be on the show, Timcast IRL. So we went to Washington, D.C. and we went down and down to the swamp, and we were looking at the Lincoln Memorial and all the monuments and statues and things of this nature. And I remember just getting an eerie feeling looking at all these monuments and statues. Of course, you see them on TV, but to be there in real life, like I just had this eerie feeling. Like it just kind of felt sacrilegious to me. It felt very pagan to me. There's things about Lincoln that I like. There's things about Lincoln that I don't like. I would say that there's more that I like about him than what I don't like. But even seeing the statue of him was just very off-putting to me. I can't explain it. I can't quite put my finger on what it was, but sure, it's cool that that's there and all that, but it's like I just really wasn't feeling it. Now, am I going to advocate for the tearing down of that statue? No, I'm not. But it really kind of solidifies in my mind when the Bible says that we're to be in the world but not of the world. It's difficult for me to enjoy pagan monuments when I'm not of the world, when I'm not of the thing that, I'm being asked to celebrate, when I don't feel like I'm genuinely connected to that thing that I'm being asked to celebrate. And even in the church, if you have a graven image, a statue of, the crucified Messiah on the cross, like even that, like when I go to a church or visit a church and they have that, like that's very off-putting to me because it seems very, like you're doing too much at this point. It reminds me of, I think it was Peter when they were brought up to during the Transfiguration. I think that's what it's called, whenever Peter wanted to just stop everything and build monuments and build this and build that, and he was stopped, and so, you know what I mean. So it's like, again, there is such a thing as doing too much. We learn in the Old Testament, we learn in the scriptures that God doesn't want all of our useless sacrifices, all of our, you know what I mean, dancing and singing and all the things. Like, what he wants is a heart like that's sold out to him. Like, that's what he wants. He just wants us. He wants our hearts. He doesn't want us to like go out of our way to build all these monuments and all of these, structures and things of this nature to prove how much we love him and all the things. Like, and that too goes for wearing a crucifix or whatever the case may be. So I don't want to belabor the point any further. So anyway, I decided not to participate in it because I didn't feel like I had a dog in the race. But some of my friends here in Dallas, they decided to participate in it, and I do have a video of that news segment and how all that turned out. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Let's go here. Sorry, guys, bear with me. Let's go to downloads. Icon. No, I had it queued up, but for some reason it disappeared. So this is the news segment that I was asked to be a part of um, for Black Republicans advocating for or advocating against the tearing down of these Confederate statues.
Mayor Mike Rawlings released the names of task force members who will look at solutions to the Confederate statues on Dallas Park property. The mayor has said he's confident the statues will come down. However, some African-American conservatives have another opinion. Fox 4's Sean Rabb with more.
Hi, Heather. The group I spoke with today say they are bothered by what.
So this man is Sean Rabb. I have his number in my phone. Again, he called me and said, "Hey, we're getting a bunch of Black Republicans together to hear why y'all want to keep the Confederate flag or statues up." And to me, it's like, okay, you're telling me what my opinion is on this particular matter. Like, you're the one who's telling me how I should feel about this issue, and this kind of speaks to this kind of insisted upon binary that the mainstream media that they do. Naturally, whenever a group of Democrats or leftists or Marxists establish that they believe a certain thing about a certain thing, of course, the mainstream media automatically believe that Republicans or conservatives hold the equal and opposite view on that same thing. And so, when I got the phone call, it's like, hey, I know you want to keep the Confederate statues up. Do you want to come on camera and be interviewed for us? Like, first of all, that's not my position on this. Second of all, no, I have no interest in just being on TV just for the sake of being on TV and saying stuff. And hey, look, I'm a Black Republican. And it was like, that to me is silly. And so I decided not to be in it. But yeah, this is Sean Rabb. I don't have anything against the guy. I don't think that he was being nefarious. Again, I just think that it's a tendency of the mainstream media to kind of push this kind of back and forth, us versus them thing, always keeping us at each other's throat, when really it's not like that in all reality. Like, the individuals who are trying to tear down the statues are a fringe group. These are a fringe group of people. And of course, Mayor Mike Rawlings was succumbing to and acquiescing to and caving to this fringe group. It wasn't the majority of Dallas standing up and saying, we deserve that, we demand that these statues be torn down. Like, that's not a thing that happened. The fact is, you had this fringe group who acted offended, and Mayor Mike Rawlings, who is weak, who's very soy, let me just put it that way, decided to cave and put together a committee to, consider tearing it down and all the things. And so, yeah, that just to kind of give you a little bit of context here.
they see as behind the statue removal and say they have a better answer than removing symbols of the South's fight in the Civil War. Dallas's Confederate War Memorial.
What the travesty is that this is a part of our nation's overall history.
Now being guarded by police.
This affects not only my ancestors who were slaves, but it also affects those who are being identified by certain names.
As battles being fought nationwide to bring them down, these men say, leave them up.
Well, it's not one that's being driven by the African American community. It's one that's being driven by the Antifa. And that group, I believe, is a group that is set on dividing our nation.
Black men identifying as either conservative, black conservative, or simply Republican say the monument should stay with added footnotes to history.
We should have.
So this is one of the more foolish among the comments that were made during this segment. Listen to what this guy says. Why is my mouse not working? All right, here we go.
Simply Republican say the monument should stay with added footnotes to history.
So listen to what this
We
guy
should
says.
have Nat Turner, Sojourner Truth, a statue of a slave that shows what he looked like after he's been beaten, and show that just a true side of history, so we'll see a balance.
Blaming.
So he wants a, and I stole this from my friend Blanche. This guy wants a a Confederate nativity scene is basically what he's asking for. Like, that's, for one, that will look very comical. For two, is like, no, like that to me is an example of what I was referring to earlier when I said that, you know, they're looking for people who just want to be on TV, like that. That's not a very well thought out idea. Like, that's an idea that my 5-year-old daughter would come up with. Yeah, we should have a slave that what it looks like, you know, his back after he's gotten beaten. We should have a master with a whip, and the whip should be like, you know, in the middle of the air, looking like it's about to come down and strike a Negro slave. And we should have, it's like, stop. Like, no, we don't need all of that. We don't need to add more graven images to the already existing graven images. Like, we just don't need it. But again, this is the kind of rut that a lot of Black Republicans find themselves in, because they want to try to have it both ways. On the one hand, they insist on keeping, you know, true to conservative values, conservative views, but they want to at the same time placate. Why my throat so dry? Where'd my water go? Oh, there it is, right in front of me. Excuse me, guys.
Clashes like Charlottesville over monuments on those who want them down.
The battle we are fighting right now is actually a tool that's being used by those on the left to, and unfortunately, Black people are being played again by something that's not really in our interests.
Removing statues, won't they say?
Carlton said, we need to see our ancestors getting beat up and graped. It will help the help the youth understand that we got our butts kicked throughout history. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Dear Woke Christian says, did you say nativity scene? Yeah, this is what this guy was talking about. He wants a Confederate nativity scene. For what precisely? I guess to Carlton Banks's point, Carlton Banks III, in order to show, like, look, here's how Black folks have gotten beaten up throughout history. Here's how we, you know what I mean? So it's like, but in all seriousness, that's exactly what the left wants. Like, what this Black conservative is saying is exactly what the left wants. Like, they want to continue to show, you know, and it's very ironic, obviously, that's coming from the mouth of a Black Republican, but, you know, the left very much wants to, at every opportunity they have, show young people, look how dirty Blacks were treated. Like, look how wrong Blacks were treated throughout history. And the reason they do that is to instill a sense of bitterness in the minds of young Black folks, because to the extent that you can embitter an entire generation that bitter, which yields anger, can be relied upon during election season to vote for the demagogue politicians who utilize that anger to win elections. And so this is exactly what they want. So why are you advocating for what they want? Again, the fact that you're advocating for what they want shows me that you haven't really thought through what it is you're saying. So that's where I stand on that. So let's go ahead and move on. Get rid of that. So so let's see here. I wanted to get into this this video that Jubilee just released a couple weeks ago with Black Republicans versus white liberals, and this is in reality what prompted me to do this live, because a lot of what I was hearing from the quote unquote Black Republican or Black conservative side, I was very displeased with. And I wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what it is I personally am advocating against. And the short version is that I very much dislike this tendency that folks have, regardless of what color you are, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you are, that folks have to always blame political policy on the conditions of our society, of our civilization right now, with all of its warts and bruises. Everybody, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on, always blame political policy. And what this does is it treats people not as people, but as items, as inanimate objects to be moved to and fro by politicians, legislatures, political policy advisors, so on and so forth. It takes away the factor of human agency, of individual agency. That's exactly what that does. And for some people that might be true because we've been educated into a kind of drone state where we very much do go exactly where the government tells us to go, believe what the government tells us to believe by way of the media, by way of entertainment, the entertainment industry, by way of celebrity, so on and so forth. So yes, there are a lot of us who are just completely compliant to political policy and are completely oblivious to what's going on. We follow the advice and the instruction of the celebrity class. So yeah, there are a lot of us who just are completely, gone mentally and are empty vessels to be poured into by this dark and dying secular culture. So yeah, there are some of us who are that, but then there are those of us who are defiant, who are rebellious, who have the ability to, and I say rebellious not in this negative connotation per se, but more so we're not so easily going to go along with something or believe something just because it's being peddled through the media, the news, or what have you. So that's what I mean. Rebellion isn't always a bad thing. It can be a good thing. But anyway, so when I listen to this conversation between Black Republicans and white Democrats, again, all they're talking about is political policy, as if people don't have agency, as though people can't, form their own opinions or make decisions regardless of what they're being told by a certain political party, regardless of who is in office, regardless of what president is in office, so on and so forth. And so that, the conversation very much smacked of that. And I feel that the fact that we do lean so heavily on political policy when we have these kind of conversations, these political conversations, is because we do live in a society where the majority of people are educated through the public school system. And the public school system has actively taught us how to be statists and how to think like statists. In other words, to think of what the state, what the politicians are doing, what kind of policies are they pushing, and how will these policies help the most amount of people in a given society. So this is what we think about. And so when it comes to questions of, what we should do about the minimum wage, you have a Republican answer, you have a Democrat answer. When it comes to the question of what should we do about, healthcare or this or that, like we have a Republican answer and a Democrat answer. And like that's the kind of binary and that's the kind of Overton window in which we are asked to function. And the reality is, if I'm thinking about my health, it doesn't matter what the government is doing. My health is my responsibility. What I put into my body is my responsibility. Whether I exercise or not is my responsibility. Like, what does policy have to do with me keeping up with my health? When it comes to, whatever the case may be, the minimum wage, like whoever said that I have to make the bare minimum? If I don't have skills to get a better job, why can't I just go learn skills so I can get a better job? Like, what does the government have to do with what I'm making? Right. And so you have a Republican answer, you have a Democrat. It's like, we don't need any policy to tell us, It's like, and the Republican answer oftentimes is just as bad as the Democrat answer. So let's play clip one from this interview or panel or debate or whatever you want to call it. And I'll give you some responses or reaction, whatever you want to call it, to some of what we're hearing, some of what we're listening to. So let's see here. Not your average. Boom. So I covered this first topic last night. So I don't think I'll go as deep into it as I did last night as it pertains to Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can watch the time I went on Lieutenant Colonel Alan West's podcast. I did go into pretty deep detail as it relates to the Tulsa Race Riot. And I touched on a little bit of it last night on our Cutting Through the Culture episode of, will racism or will socialism, is socialism the answer to racism? So I did cover it in that as well. But here yet again is the Black Wall Street myth being used in these kind of political discussions that we often have when talking specifically about whether or not Blacks can use the free market or capitalism to mobilize upward in society.
Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. Even in times of the United States history where Black people tried to build wealth, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual parent households.
Okay, so this guy's name is Destiny, which is a weird name for a man to have. I think he's that. But anyway, so he says that, like, he basically repeats the same talking point that we always hear. He brings up, Tulsa, and he's using this to say that, every time Black people build anything of substance, anytime Black people do it the way America says we should do it, in terms of, like, picking yourself up by your bootstraps, here along comes white American racists to burn it down, to tear it down, and all the things. And so every time I hear this, I'm going to have to rebuff it. Like, I'm going to have to, because these people are allowed to run amok. They're allowed to just say stuff without being, checked on it, because most people are ignorant as to what even happened in Tulsa. Most people have heard the same talking points as it relates to Tulsa. And so, it's important each and every time with whatever platform I have, I know it's not a big one, but with whatever platform I have, it's important for me to challenge this narrative every time I hear it, because if it's not being challenged, people are going to continue to believe the lie. People are going to continue to believe the myth that capitalism, free market enterprise does not work for Black folks because white racists always tear it down. When you look at the race riot, not massacre, it wasn't a massacre, it was a riot. When you look at the race riot of 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the details surrounding the fact that you had this mob of white folks and this mob of black folks in one place, angry and embittered, like nobody talks about why those two groups were there. The narrative is that is that you had a black guy who was accused of raping or I'm not supposed to say that word here on YouTube, but of R-wording or about to R-word a young white woman on an elevator. He was arrested. A group of white folks showed up to basically demand a kind of mob justice where they wanted to drag homeboy out and kill him. And the sheriff said, no, we're not going to release him to you. We're going to, let him go through due process or what have you. And because they were so angry, because they didn't get what they want, the white folks decided to burn everything down in this black community. It's not what happened. It's not what happened at all. They also say that 3,000 blacks were killed and buried in a mass grave. That mass grave has not been located today because it doesn't exist. The reality is that you had something go on in the elevator. It's still not true to this day what that thing was. And the issues surrounding it are very kind of sketchy. Man, why is my throat so dry? Yeah, so the issues are sketchy. You had an article, a newspaper article written by Richard Lloyd Jones, which the headline was "Nab Negro for Raping White Girl." Now, a little bit about Richard Lloyd Jones. Your average scholar today would say that the article was written to provoke the Ku Klux Klan to be angry enough to show up with pitchforks and torches and so on in order to drag Dick Rowland out of the jail. But that's not the fact is, like, yes, the Klan was enticed. Yes, they were provoked to do this by the newspaper article. But because there's details that's left out, you would think that Richard Lloyd Jones, the newspaper editor, was himself a Klan member or was sympathetic to the Klan or what have you. As it turns out, Richard Lloyd Jones was actually sympathetic to the Communist Party. He and his wife were both involved in, quote, progressive ideology, unquote. And so, they were involved in birth control and Planned Parenthood before it was Planned Parenthood, but they were friends with people like Margaret Sanger. They were friends with people like Robert La Follette. They were friends with people like Woodrow Wilson, like on a first name basis. So they were all in cahoots with each other. And, why would this guy who is supposed to be this progressive, like what dealings would such a man have with the Ku Klux Klan? Well, actually, as it turns out, the Klan themselves were being influenced by the communists either directly or indirectly through agitative tactics. And so again, because nobody wants to talk about that, we just think that this thing happened organically, just kind of out of nowhere because white people hated blacks. No, there's actually more to the story. And A.J. Smitherman, who was the black newspaper journalist and was also a civil rights attorney, he wrote an article in the black newspaper there in Tulsa, provoking a mob of black folks to also show up to the jail. And so you had A.J. Smitherman, the NAACP agent, and you had Richard Lloyd Jones, the communist sympathizing journalist, both writing articles to their respective groups to get them angered, bittered, or embittered, so on and so forth. And both, like clockwork, showed up to the jail angry at each other. And then a riot started. There were shots fired. And from early accounts, the shots came from the black side of the equation. You had a mob that broke out, and by the first accounts of the happenings of that day, there are a couple of dozen folks who died, both black and white, right? But then, of course, as revisionist history came along, we now, the number went up to 300, and then ultimately the number went up to 3,000. They say that there's a mass grave, and nobody's ever found the mass grave. Why? Because it doesn't exist. And in fact, this thriving black kind of metropolis of sorts, they say, as Destiny just said, they burned it down, and then that's the end of the story. Notice how he said they burned it down, and then he moved on to the next topic. They don't tell you the next part, which is it was built back a year or two later. A year or two later, it was built back. If you look at the footage from Solomon Sir Jones, who was a pastor and amateur filmmaker in Tulsa, Oklahoma at this time, who was very good at documenting and categorizing and organizing his footage, he would have signposts before each event that he filmed. If you look at his footage from, in Tulsa, Oklahoma around this time, 1922, 1923, 1924, 1925. The riot, mind you, happened in 1921, but you see in the 5 or 6 years after the riot, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood District, Black Wall Street, and you see what? You see black businesses thriving. You see white people eating in black restaurants and black people, you know what I mean? So it's like you see kids playing outside. You see 4th of July parades, black 4th of July parades with American flags in 1924 and in 1925 after the riot. The fact is, you still had thriving businesses in Black Wall Street after the riot up and until 1960, around the 1960s, when guess who came onto the scene? Martin Luther King. And he started talking his mess about how, America is racist. And, we live on, his To America speech, where he says black people live on a lonely island of despair, whereas white people live in a plentiful land of, flowing with milk and honey and jobs and all the things. So what he did masterfully, what Martin Luther King was able to do masterfully with his rhetoric, with his words, was instill a spirit of bitterness in black folks, where we decided to put down our tools, to let our hands off the proverbial plow and resort to protesting and demanding and militancy and all the things. And when he was assassinated, that vamped it up all the more, because this is how communists work. So to the question of, well, why would communists be interested in a race riot in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places? There's an answer to that question. You see, the NAACP and other communist groups were trying to get at the head of black organizations. They were trying to establish themselves as leaders among black folks in the South. They already had, New York and other northern cities locked up. They had those on lock, but they had a very tough time getting into leadership positions in the South amongst blacks, because blacks by and large in the South rejected the NAACP. Blacks by and large in the South rejected the communists. The communists were always down South, especially in Alabama, trying to form unions among black folks, trying to agitate black folks against white people. Like they were like constantly doing this. Why? Because they didn't want for black folks, the communists didn't want for black folks to get ahead by way of the free market, by production and industry. They didn't want them to get ahead and by becoming capitalists. They wanted them rather to collectivize themselves as communists. That's the reason. Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, was an example of how the free market works, how capitalism works. And it was such an ugly sight to the communists. And so for that reason, they saw it fit to constantly do these kind of agitative things to embitter black folks against the American system, and say and cause them to say to themselves, we tried doing it the way America tells us that we should do it, but here along came the Klan and this white mob to burn it down. Let us hire the NAACP to be our advocates, to be our leaders, and to fight this injustice and to fight this racism. You see how this works? They do the same thing today. They do the same kinds of things today. It didn't work early on. Ultimately, it did work around the 1960s. Ultimately, it did. But they were trying this thing for a very long time. What's his name? Manning Johnson made the same exact point in his farewell address. He said, and I quote, "They want you to, they want you to come together, not with ordinary white people. They want you to come together instead with the white communists." He talks about how, it used to be the case that black men would talk over this fence to, their white neighbors, and they would, enjoy time together, and they were, slowly kind of working out their differences and coming together. And this was an ugly sight for the communists. The communists didn't want for black folks to come together with ordinary white folks. They instead wanted them to come together with the white communists. We didn't need the civil rights movement. We didn't need the NAACP or any of these other, unnecessary agitative organizations, because blacks and whites were already coming together. They were already working out their differences. Here along came the communists. They did all these kind of nefarious, behind the scenes, clandestine, covert, agitative tactics to the unsuspecting white man who didn't know that it was all agitation. They thought that it was black folks being up to no good. And so that embittered them, and that enraged them, and that caused them to react in an irrational way. And the same is true for blacks, because they didn't know that they were also being played. They saw that reactionaryism, that irrational reactionaryism that was being carried out by certain whites, not all whites, but by certain whites, they saw that as a kind of confirmation of what the NAACP was already saying through their propaganda. White people are racist. White Southerners are racist. They don't like you. They hate you. And so when you're constantly being told that, and you don't know that all these agitated things are being done and behind the scenes in order to provoke anger in white folks, to the extent that white folks react to that agitation, that propaganda becomes all the more real to you when you see white people, looking at you a certain kind of way or calling you boy and all the things. And so again, the devil is in the details, and the devil is behind the scenes, causing this kind of turmoil and animosity from one group to another. What I'm saying, I understand, is very nuanced. What I'm saying, I know is, I listening to myself talk, I understand that what I'm saying is a lot to take in. But I'm telling you, folks, you have to research this stuff and see it for yourself. You can't just go along with the narrative that we all have been taught in our public schools, because the point of the narrative is to make you believe that all of the social justice movements that came off the back of all this stuff that happened in the past were necessary. The civil rights movement was necessary. Feminism was necessary. The free love movement was necessary. The Federal Reserve System was necessary. All the things that we're told were the conditions of the past are told in such a way so as to make you think that everything the government did was necessary. Because if not for the civil rights movement, we still have segregation. No, we wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. We just wouldn't. If it wasn't for, again, think about it as like your kids, if you have kids, right? If you are a dumb adult, if you're so dumb that you can easily be manipulated and played by a child, then I can see how your children will get over on you. However, if you are someone who has an IQ above 2 digits, or not above 2 digits, but above the number 10, then you would know that children are nefarious creatures. Children do lie. Children do manipulate. He might come and say that my brother hit me and not tell you why his brother hit him. And when you find out more about the story, you see that the kid who came and told actually did something that was twice as worse in order to provoke his brother to hit him. But because you're not able to look into details, and because you don't ask the right questions, you just take the word of the little tattletale, and then you go in and get on to or discipline the child who hit, the kid who told, not understanding that what the child, did who told was actually twice as worse than the hitting, if that makes sense. And so again, we've allowed ourselves as a society to be played by the kid who told. We allowed ourselves to be played by the communists who were working behind the scenes to brew this kind of agitation and to brew this kind of manipulation that caused the legislation which usurped our freedoms as American citizens, especially our freedoms as small business owners, and expanded the role of the government. That was the result of all the things that we're told happened in the past, was an expanded government state. And so this is where we are. So sorry it took so long for me to break all that down from this first portion of this clip with Destiny saying, oh yeah, Black Wall Street, Tulsa, that's the reason why blacks haven't been able to thrive. No, it's not. It's just not. It's not. It's a lie. Bold-faced lie. Before I let this video continue playing, I think I got a super chat somewhere. Let me see if I still have that. Oh yeah, here it is. Come on. Sorry guys, I'm beach balling. If you have a Mac, then you know what I'm referring to. All right, here we go. He says, hey fam, when are we going to have our discussion? I'm looking forward to it. Oh yeah, that's Sub-Zero. I need to call him this week. I'll call you this week. In fact, I think I'll call you either today or tomorrow. So yeah, that'll be a good discussion over reparations. All right, so I'm gonna let this video continue.
It is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that
no, not because of racial issues. Again, like these people don't know anything. He doesn't know anything. He's saying because of racial issues, the progress that blacks were making were disrupted. No, like be honest about what happened. Again, you're only saying what we've all been told in our public school textbooks. Like who started the racial agitation? Who started the racial problems that you say existed in the past? Racist white people? No, I assure you that it's deeper than that. It wasn't just racist white. Like, think about it. I mean, people think that all the white people you see walking around who's not, calling everybody nigger or boy or, all the things, like people think that that is because we live in the 21st century and most white folks, figured out that it's wrong to do those things. Like we now have a kind of heightened moral compass as a society that our grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and great-great-grandfathers didn't have. They didn't know anything because they were barbaric and they were like, no, that's not the case at all. These men were way more elegant, more decent, more pleasant, more gentle than the guys that we see today. You can even look at their dress and tell that they were more dignified people than the way people are. Like we're walking around wearing Crocs and sweatpants. We're a disgusting generation, aesthetically speaking. When you look at these pictures of these old black and white pictures of people walking around in suits and like night and day difference. And so again, it wasn't as if you had a bunch of white people who hated black folks so much that they wanted to make life a living hell for these black folks. No, to the extent that you had reactionary retaliation from certain fringe groups of white folks in the South, they were reacting to the agitation that was being pushed by the communists. That's what happened. It wasn't organic. It wasn't natural. It wasn't just, I'm a white man. I just woke up today. You know what? I think I'm going to go hang some niggers. Like, no, that's not what happened. There was agitation, and I'm not advocating for the reactionaryism. I'm not saying that the reactionaryism was good. It was irrational reactionaryism. And then two, they don't tell you about the fact that you have black folks who are being trained and paid and motivated to go and start a lot of agitative stuff in the South. In fact, Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice, used to work undercover and go into the South as disguised as a sharecropper in order to get black folks riled up and to unionize them and to get them to do agitative things against white people. This is also true of James Weldon Johnson. He did the same kinds of things. And yeah, there was one more guy, but I'm not sure whether he was one of those too. So I'm not going to say that, only to be proven wrong later. But I'm pretty sure he was. But anyway, these are the kind of things that would happen regularly, routinely in the South. And so again, for Destiny to sit up there and say that, oh, racism presented or prevented black folks from progressing, only a small amount of that is true, but there's more to the story. That's all I'm saying.
Is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by doing these things and seeing them as
doing
inferior.
What things?
Okay, so again, like maybe I'm doing too much on being critical of what the black conservative is saying, because yes, it is true that Democrat politicians were responsible for certain policies and all the things. But again, the fact that these conversations stay in the realm of Democrat policies, Republican policies, we can't move past the fact that at the end of the day, human agency has to kick in at some point. Democrats did this, Republican, like, okay, like I know about, what Democrats did and didn't do just as well as the next guy. I know that Margaret Sanger was a Democrat. Like I know that Planned Parenthood is funded by and promoted by a Democrat. Like I know all that. But at what point does human agency kick in and say, look, you don't have to go and get an abortion. You can have character and dignity and not go and get an abortion. Like I know that, they want to hire more white people than black people because the minimum wage is now law, and there are certain employers who are now more likely to hire the white guy than the black or the Hispanic guy now that this new policy is in play. Like, okay, I'm aware that Democrats did that, but at what point does human agency kick in and people believe or realize that I can just go start up my own business and undercut those guys, the white guys, and get more business and become wealthier? At what point does that human agency kick in? And I say that not as a theory, but something that actually happened. Something that actually happened when the minimum wage law was passed. There were black business owners, or there were black employees who lost their jobs. And what did those black employees do? Did they sit on their hands and moan and call up the NAACP to come advocate for them? No, they started their own businesses, and they actually ended up doing better than they did when they were working for somebody. They don't tell you about that kind of stuff. They only tell you, well, Democrats, okay, like I got it. Democrats are bad. Like how much more do I need to hear the same old story? At what point do we talk about personal responsibility, regardless of what the politicians are doing? The Democrat, if I hear that one more time in my comment sections when I post videos on IG and whatever, well, the Democrats, what about personal responsibility? Whatever happened to that? Let's keep it moving.
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
Affirmative action and welfare wouldn't ruin your culture if you didn't have poor character enough to fall for it, to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Again, affirmative action, yes, is bad legislation. Welfare, yes, is bad legislation. But why is it that you don't see other ethnic groups who are equally as disadvantaged as quote unquote black folks, why don't you see the same margins of other ethnic groups flocking to the welfare system as you do black folks? And it's interesting because people think, oh, white and black. Like, no, like even in what you call white, you have you have subsects of ethnic groups within what you call white that weren't treated so great, especially if they were newcomers coming from Ireland and Italy and other such countries, and Germany. And so when they came here, they didn't exactly get the most welcoming reception. They were kept out of places too. Yeah, they show you the colored or the no colored allowed signs. They like to show you that in your textbooks. They never show you the no Irish allowed signs. They never show you that, even though those existed. Or no Japanese signs. You think Asians were welcome to white life? No, nigger, you go back over there. Come here, Chinese fella. Come here, Chinaman. You can come. Here's a table right here. I have it set up for you. Like, no, that's not a thing that was happening. Again, why is it that black folks flocked to this welfare system once the floodgates were open at a higher ratio than did, or a higher margin rather, than did other ethnic groups? Because of the character. The character was compromised. And the character was compromised by the civil rights movement, by black leaders, by black communists who subverted the church. They got into the good graces of black folks by way of the church. And when they did that, they began to chisel away at sound doctrine. They began to bastardize this and introduce something called the social gospel and liberation theology. There's no character in liberation theology. There's only anger and bitterness in liberation theology. And so whenever your character is compromised, a government welfare system sounds good to you. Hard work doesn't sound good to you anymore. Dignity, responsibility doesn't sound good to you anymore. You now want to protest. You now want to, you are now embittered and entitled. You think the government owes you something. And so, of course, when the government says, here's your welfare check, you feel like you deserve that. You feel like you're owed that. So, of course, you're going to flock to get that. And so it didn't start with the policy. It predates the policy. Character predates policy. Let's see here. Let me get this off the screen. Okay, remove from stage. Remove from studio. All right, so let's see what else they have to say. All right, number 2. Go.
We're clear, giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free,
well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing.
You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario because yes, okay, you want to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath.
So, I'm breathing.
Okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am, sadly.
I don't know what that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least the I don't want to put that on you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure, if you're talking about a lottery, you just say, take money. But there are strings attached to that money.
Take all the money.
There are strings attached to that money.
Give them millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
It
hasn't been a reparations. It hasn't been this or that. It has been a welfare program, Great Societies Act, that was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these people living here.
So then let them keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean, I guess so, but I guarantee you, there is no way that
Why would you not advocate for that? I just want to make sure.
So where even do I start with that? So the clip starts off by Alec, the white liberal, saying that giving people money that they haven't worked for doesn't hurt them; it helps them. Do I even need to explain how that's not true? I think evidence speaks for itself when you look at the fact that your average inner city, where you have a lot of people who do not work but do get food stamps, who do get housing, who do get all the things, like there's no production coming out of these places. So, yes, it hurts them more than it helps them. These are cities that people hate to drive through. They roll their windows up and lock their doors. They get frightened. And so the fact of the matter is these contexts, they actually produce more negativity than positivity. They actually could produce more crime than, anything positive. And you have a lot of these youngsters who are growing up and they're joining gangs, and like that's where they find family, that's where they find peace and all the things, and they don't even find peace there. But my point is like they find a sense of belonging in the gangs, and these gangs get together, they do all kinds of nefarious things, whether it be robbing, stealing, killing, selling drugs. So yes, giving people money for not working is a bad thing. It's weird to hear adults making any point otherwise. And then you have I mean, God bless him, you have the black Republican saying, well, I guess, but that hasn't happened. Like it has happened. But I get his point. He's saying that like it hasn't happened in the form of like reparations. It's happened, through welfare, and welfare has had a negative impact. He's right about that. But in my opinion, in my personal opinion, he may have. I mean, this is an edited clip. In my opinion, he didn't do as great of a job basically rebuffing the entire premise of how giving somebody something that they haven't worked for does hurt them. It just does hurt them. I forget who it was, but there was some kind of psychologist or scientist or something like that who got together like 8 rats and put them in a controlled environment where all their food was provided for them, like all of like everything that they needed was provided for them, and so they didn't have to uh, uh, scramble around and basically find their food and go through the rough and tough and of the life of an average rat to try to find food and water and make a way for itself. All that stuff was provided for them, so they didn't have anything to do. And so what did they do? They started humping each other, and that 8 rats became, I think, like 2,000 or something like that in a short space of time. And so of course, human beings aren't rats, but my point is like the same kind of thing happens when you put people in a certain area, or I don't want to say put people in a certain area. When people are drawn to a certain area because they are attracted to the notion that my bills will be paid for, my my healthcare will be taken care of, everything will be taken care of, and this, that, and the third. And you subject your children to such a lifestyle, of course those children are going to grow up and they're not going to be productive, and it's not going to go over good for them, and this is going to become a generational thing. So yeah, of course that's a thing that's going to happen. And so yes, giving people money that they don't have to work for, and you're just giving them money, like that hurts them. Doesn't matter what color they are. This has been proven throughout history, and it's proven to this very day all over the world. To the extent that you just give people money for something that they haven't earned, that hurts them. And in fact, when people have to work for what they eat and shelter and things of this nature, that builds character. Work is a character building activity. It just is. Whenever you work and then you have a sense of pride for the fact that that you built a thing or that you produce in this way, it also gives you a greater appreciation for what you have. This is the reason why if you drive through a neighborhood where the folks are homeowners, it looks better. The grass is cut, the houses are painted, the trees are well manicured and well kept. It's not the case when you drive through a house or a neighborhood where people rent. Grass growing out, crazy, and you have all sorts of of chaos going on in these neighborhoods. Now, I'm not trying to hate or talk bad about anyone, but again, it's a night and day difference. There's no sense of ownership. Whenever you worked hard and you earned what you have more pride and dignity in that what you've built. Whereas if you didn't work for it, you're not going to take care of it at all. And so, yes, giving people something that they haven't earned is not good for them at all. But again, this goes back to how it's easy to say anything. It's easy to get on TV or get on an interview and just spout out the mouth and not have to do the due diligence of really thinking through what you're saying. And this white guy really thinks he won the argument because what in what scenario is it wrong to have money or wrong for money to be given to you? How does that hurt you? And then the black guy, again, he disappoints me with his answer.
And that has not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
It
hasn't been a reparations. It hasn't been this or that. It has been a welfare program, Great Societies Act, that was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these people living here.
So then let them keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean,
okay, so the black guy comes with a good rebuttal, right? He says the Great Societies Act and the welfare programs, the incentive for getting the welfare check was that there can't be a man in the home. And so the family split up, which again, I slightly disagree. I don't think that it was the act in itself that split the families up. Again, you already have to have poor character to allow for such a policy to affect your family, to impact your family. My wife would never tell me, hey, Chad, the government's going to give us a welfare check if you leave us. So please leave us. Like, she would have to have poor character to say such a thing. And I would have to have poor character to even listen to such a thing. You see how this works? And so it's not the policy, it's the people. It's the people. The policy doesn't split up the families. The people split up their family. You made the decision to split your family up. I'm sorry, but you just did. And so, again, it's wrong that the policy even exists. It's wrong that we even have a welfare system to begin with. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the Great Societies Act, the only reason why the language about the father in the home is even in there is because these were Republicans who thought that such language would encourage families to stay together. They thought that such language would communicate to society that, we're going to look out for orphans and widows in their time of need. And this is only reserved for you. But if you have a man in the home, we think and would hope that that man is working to provide for his family. And so, again, this is how Republicans were also gullible. Yes, Republicans are capable of being gullible too. Republicans haven't been the knight in shining armor that you all think that they've been throughout history. They've been either gullible or complicit. Civil Rights Act, their participation in it. I myself said in Uncle Tom Part 1 that the Republicans, there were more of them that signed the Civil Rights Act, and I said I sounded like a fool. I sounded like someone who didn't do my research, and I own that. And it wasn't until after I did research where I figured out, wow, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was terrible legislation. It was just as unconstitutional as what it was trying to fix. On the one hand, yes, it's unconstitutional for a state to mandate segregation among its people, but it's just as unconstitutional, and I would even argue more unconstitutional, for the federal government to come in and tell private business owners that you have to hire, such people, and you have to serve such people. Leave that up to the free market. Let them decide. Let people vote with their dollars, so to speak. We don't need the federal government telling private-owned companies and private-owned businesses who they can and can't hire and who they can and can't serve. And so, again, it was woefully unconstitutional, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And Republicans, who are supposed to be constitutionalists, made a very bad decision. They usurped our rights as American citizens, and they've expanded themselves. They expanded their role in society. We don't need a bigger government. Yes, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 expanded the role of government. It gave us a bigger government, and your Republicans are to thank for that. Martin Luther King was a Democrat. LBJ was a Democrat. Democrats have obviously been wicked, nefarious agents in our society. That goes without saying. But Republicans don't get a pass. They've been either complicit or they've been gullible throughout the last 100 years. And don't even get me started on Lincoln. But anyway, let me see here. Again, I'm not your average black Republican or black conservative. I'm not even a Republican, but I'm not your black conservative, like your average black conservative, because I believe in human agency. I believe in character. I believe in merit. I believe in personal responsibility. And so I'm not always going to resort to political policy and what the Democrats did or Republicans did when I'm talking about these things, because at the end of the day, it's on you, especially if you're a man. It's on you. Regardless of if Biden's in office or Trump's office, it's on you. Now, for those of you who are curious, yes, I tend to vote for Republicans because they're closer to my line of thinking than our Democrats. But I have no illusions about this idea that Republicans are going to get in there and fix everything, because they're not. And oftentimes they're just as bad as their Democratic colleagues. So let's keep it playing.
Program,
Welfare
Great
was
Societies
designed.
Act that
Welfare
was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these
So
people
then let
living
them
here.
keep the family together and keep all the money.
So he says, well, let them keep the family together. Like if your argument is that these welfare policies split up the family, well, okay, let's get rid of that language where, if a man is in the house, then you don't get these benefits. Let's keep them together and still give them the benefits. And what is the response?
I mean, I guess so, but I guarantee.
I mean, I guess so. Like, what? No. That completely just negates everything that you just said. Stand true to what you said. That giving people money for something that they haven't earned is wrong. It doesn't produce anything. It doesn't produce character. In fact, it produces crime. Stick to that. I mean, I guess, like, what? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too critical. Again, this is just the edited version. And so maybe he went in on a homeboy. Maybe that's what happened. But I'm not liking what I'm hearing.
I guess so.
No
Why would you not advocate for that?
Okay. Let me calm down. Do we have time? Okay. We're at hour 20. I think we got some time. I think I got time for one more clip. I wanted to get to okay. I'll get to this last clip, and then I will get to some scripture to bring all this home, and then I'll get to your guys' comments. I think I saw a couple of super chats that came through. So let's see here. Do I want to go Democrats are racist or affirmative action? I think I've belabored the point of how it's unproductive to constantly call Democrats racist. I mean, that goes without saying. Let me see here.
This research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into, had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era. And, you have policies like redlining that influence, how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put Black people as generally in a worse off position than white Americans?
I think obviously we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among Black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat Party.
Well, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not like. That's more aligned with more racist policies
It's
in this
very
country.
difficult
Like
to
very
compare 2020's conservatism to 1880s conservatism.
Again, like, okay. I mean, like, again, he's going back to policy. The Democrats said this, they ran people out of their home. It was like, really? I mean, yeah, like that's somewhat true, but like you're calling this thing the race massacre? You didn't do your research either, homeboy? Again, like keeping everything in the binary of Republican and Democrat instead of looking at the communist influence and the race agitation means that the communists get to get off scot-free. And when the communists get to get off scot-free, their ideology continues to be pushed in our colleges and universities across the country, and our young people become more and more susceptible to it, more and more embracing of it, because they believe only positive things about communism, because they are unaware of the agitative history of communists in our society. When you look at a lot of the church bombings that went on prior to the civil rights movement, where little girls were dying in these black churches and so on, like, you are inclined to believe that some racist Klansmen came and burned these churches down, when the reality is you had communists who were involved in the burning down of these churches. So if they're willing to burn down your churches, if they're willing to provoke race riots, if they're willing to sabotage black businesses, communists, if they're willing to do all that to get their ideology to spread in our nation, that to me is deserving of scrutiny, not praise. But again, a lot of our youth are embracing communism all the more, unashamedly, because they've only heard about the virtues of communism through Karl Marx and through the propaganda of their professors. Their professors only sing the praises of communism, and comparatively, they talk about the atrocities of the colonizers and of Western civilization and of Christianity. And so while they're tabooing everything good, they're celebrating and up-talking everything bad. And so when black Republicans talk about Democrats and Republicans, that creates just enough distraction for the communists to continue doing what they're doing. That's the point that I'm making. And so it's not so much that I'm just trying to be hard on the black Republican just for the sake of being hard on him. What I'm hard on more specifically, I can't even get my words together this morning. But what I'm hard on more specifically is the fact that we are a generation that just doesn't do our research. So that's what I have a problem with. Let's see here. So this is the one that I really wanted to get to right here.
Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time. And I think that every black person knows how to get into college. Every black,
okay, so
I mean, we could pull out the name.
That's enough.
I think affirmative.
So the question was, I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end Roe v. Wade, or not Roe v. Wade, but end affirmative action. And look at how many people sat down agreeing with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action. And again, this kind of goes with the title of today's broadcast, which is I'm not your average black conservative. And I'm about to explain to you why, as it relates to this question of whether or not the Supreme Court should have gotten rid of affirmative action. Because naturally, a lot of people would say, well, aren't you a black conservative? Don't you want the Supreme Court to get rid of affirmative action? You know, I know a lot of you would think that, but, you know, watch this. Well, look how many people sit down.
The action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for.
So, okay. So basically almost everybody sat down, with the exception of a couple white liberals, because they agree that the Supreme Court had the authority to end affirmative action. Now, I am someone who's for small government. I'm explaining to you why I think that the Supreme Court made the wrong decision. I'm someone who's for small government. I'm someone who believes in an institution's right to conduct business in the way that they see fit, regardless of what other people think. Because when it comes to how people think, you can choose to patronize their business with your dollars, or you can choose to spend your dollars elsewhere. And so that goes for colleges and universities as well. If you are a college or university and you want to implement an affirmative action process that you use to admit people, enroll people into your college or university, you should have the right to do that because it's your college or university. I don't think you should receive state funding at all. I don't believe that there should be such a thing as state colleges. Like, I don't even believe in the premise that we should have state colleges to begin with. I don't believe that the government should be involved in education to begin with. And so we are, like, infrastructurally speaking, we're already starting off on the wrong foot as a society. Nowhere in the Constitution does it talk about education. And again, I know that we have the 10th Amendment, which, gives the states the ability to move with sovereignty and to do things that's not explicitly laid out in the Constitution. Got it. But again, we as a people should have enough wisdom and knowledge and understanding to see how much of a problem it could potentially be if we create a state education institutions, whether they be colleges and universities or whether they be primary, secondary education. Because the question then becomes, what kind of things will we teach in this state school? What kind of things will we teach in this state school? And the fact is, since the inception of public education, it has not bode well for society at large. We have been on a sharp decline since the inception of public education, of publicly funded education. It have not made us smarter as a society. Of course, you can talk about how innovative we are and how there's since the technological revolution, we have phones and we have tablets and we have okay, I got it. But again, I maintain and I stand by this fact that we are becoming dumber and dumber and dumber as a society. If you look at the average written essay of a college student today, and you compare it to that of an 8th grade student in America 100 years ago, then again, it's a night and day difference. The 8th graders 100 years ago were writing at a superior level to that of your average college student today. And so on the whole, we are not a smart generation, and we're becoming dumber and dumber on the whole, as a society. And so I think that we have enough evidence to say conclusively that that public education, publicly funded education, has not been a good thing for our society at all. And so again, I challenge the premise, the very notion of a public school system to begin with. But to the extent that you have a private institution, a private school, a college or university, if you want to implement a kind of affirmative action program, although I disagree with affirmative action, although I hate the affirmative action, if you, who am I to tell you as an institution that you can't implement affirmative action? And so because I don't want to do that, I certainly don't want my government to do that. Because to the extent that the government has a role and the authority to demand how people run their organizations, where does it stop? Where does it end? I am a small business owner. I don't want the government coming in to my company telling me that I have to hire people I don't want to hire, telling me I have to serve people I don't want to serve. I have my reasons for hiring who I hire. I have my reasons for not serving who I serve. I deal with my business on a daily basis. There's customers that I have blacklisted right now. There's customers that I'll never serve again. I have the right to not serve them. And so Where does it end? At what point do we stop giving the government the authority to manage every aspect of our lives? I'm not advocating for anarchy. I'm just saying, like, we don't need to give the government more power than what is constitutionally required of them. And so again, like, I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from when I say this. Like, no, I don't think that the Supreme Court made the right decision whenever they disallowed colleges and universities from implementing affirmative action. I firmly believe that, you know, I mean, if you're a private institution, you should be able to conduct business however you see fit. Yeah, I mean, it's your school. So anyway, we'll keep it moving.
Particular time, and I think that every black person.
So this is a black conservative woman saying that she believes affirmative action served its purpose. You can't make this stuff up. Like, no, it hasn't. Affirmative action has been abysmal. But I'll listen to her reasoning.
Has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time, and I think that every black person knows how to get into college. Every black, I mean, you could pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was black man, Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive.
She said, we know what to do now. Like, we know how to get into schools now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. Did you know that there were black people in college before affirmative action? Affirmative action didn't teach black people how to get into college. That's not a thing that happened in real life. Black people knew how to get into college before affirmative action. You get into college based on your merit, and if a college doesn't want you because of the color of your skin, go to a different college. Just go to a different college. Like, it's really that simple. It genuinely is that simple. Why would you want to go somewhere where you're not wanted to begin with? Like, why would you want that? Have a little bit more self-dignity. Have a little bit more respect for yourself. Why would you subject yourself to go around people who don't want you? Why would you do that? These people disgust me. Again, and I'm not saying this black conservative woman. I'm just saying, like, people who push the narrative that, oh, well, they should be able to. People should have to accept you. It's like, no, they don't. People don't have to accept you. People do. They just don't. If somebody has made it clear that they don't accept me for whatever reason, be it because of the color of my skin, be it because what I believe politically, whatever the case may be, then I will happily take myself somewhere else. I'm not going to force myself to be around somebody who doesn't want me. And it's interesting because, you know, this video went viral. Not this one, but this video went, I'm pretty sure this one did too, but this video went viral of this kid who had the "Don't Tread on Me" patch on his backpack. Republicans were, yeah, like, how dare they? This woman should be fired, and this, that, and the other. It's like, we are so lost. We are so lost as a generation. We're not even questioning the very premise of the fact that, like, I beat that dead horse. I'm not going to go there again about the existence of public schools to begin with. But the fact of the matter is, the real conservative stance should be, like, now that these educators, these teachers have showed their true colors in terms of, you know, being against the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, which is a symbol of resilience, which is a symbol of, you know, patriotism and standing up for what you believe in. Because these educators have demonstrated that is clearly not the place for this woman's child. Clearly not the place for her. So rather than it being a call for the educator to be terminated, it should have been a call for more conservative parents to start putting their children in schools that are not hostile to the values and the beliefs of those families. That's what it should have been a call for, if that makes sense. And so again, it's like, why would I subject my children to go to a school where the teachers are ultra liberal? They hate America. They hate conservative and Christian values. Like, why would I put my kids in that? Their prefrontal cortex aren't even fully developed. And of course, that kid, he seemed to me to be somebody who had a bright head on his shoulders. He seemed to me to be someone who gets it at the age of 12, but most of his peers don't. And so again, like that kid might be an exception. Like that might be the place he needs to be in order to reach a lot of his fellow students. But for your average kid, like they have no business being, especially if they have Christian or conservative parents, they have no business being in these liberal cesspools where the teachers want to kick you out of the class for having a "Don't Tread on Me" patch. Like, why subject your children to that? That's just how I feel about it.
Sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
Well, like the thing is, like you can't on the one hand say that's the thing. Like you can't on the one hand say that you like what affirmative action was for a specific amount of time, but now that it comes to your children, you don't like it anymore. And again, this goes to how little time we spend thinking through things, thinking through decisions, thinking through political policies that we vote for or against. We don't spend any time thinking about it because in the abstract, it sounds like a good idea. But when it comes to my own kids, when it comes to me personally, I don't like it anymore. It's like, well, you already created the mess to begin with by adding your voice to the chorus of the mob who insisted on this garbage to begin with. And so I have no sympathy for you now. Like the fact is, like I often find myself among a crowd of very few people who actually think things through as it relates to, the direction we're going as a society. Most people insist on going in the wrong direction, and you try to explain to them like why what they're asking for will be to our detriment as a society. You try to explain that to them, they don't care. They insist on going that way, and then we go that way only to find out later that it was the wrong decision. And then people start talking and like, yeah, that was messed up. And I'm like, okay, miss me with that. I have no sympathy for you at all. Like, I'm not going to lock arms with you. Like, you've already proven to be a poor judge of decisions and events. Like, I'm not going to, what I'm saying? And so it's like, it's one thing if you were genuinely naive, if you were genuinely, tricked or betrayed, because we're human beings, we're all capable of being tricked and betrayed. It's a different thing entirely when you are boldly, like when you are, no holds barred, like you are all in on going the wrong direction. When it comes to the Martin Luther King thing, like I explained to people who Martin Luther King really was, what he was really trying to do, how he's not this great person, this great hero that all of us make him out to be. And there are people who insist like, no, you're wrong. And here's why. And it's like, okay, you were establishing to me, you're making it very clear to me that you're just easily tricked, you're easily deceived. And so when it comes to the next politician who comes in the likeness of someone like a Martin Luther King or Barack Obama, who's saying all the things that you want to hear, who, the media is making look like they're just this great person, and you vote for them and you give them your vote only to find out later that they're going to push policies that make your life harder, that causes you to lose your job, that whatever the case may be. Like, okay, remember that conversation we had about Martin Luther King? Remember that? Remember the conversation we had about Vivek Ramaswamy? Like, remember that? Like, so it's, again, people like those who insist boldly on going in the wrong direction, I have no sympathy for. But if you're just like genuinely, well, he seems like a nice guy, I'm going to give him a chance. But, I just don't know, because you can never know about people. You can't ever really know what people's real intentions are. But from what I've heard, I'm going to give this a shot. Like, okay, I do have sympathy for those kinds of people. But for those who are like, no, you're wrong. All right, go ahead. Do what you want to do.
Action accomplished its purpose. Why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see that.
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, what he's saying is garbage. Like there's an easy answer to the question. Like, okay, the reason why more white people have jobs than black people is because there's more white people in America than black people. Like black people only make up 12% of the American population. So it's like it's very simple math. Very easy math. My 5-year-old can give you an answer to that question. But he's questioning more specifically her premise, which is that affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. Like it's done what we want it to do. And the fact of the matter is, affirmative action, like a lot of people like to say, oh, white women benefit from affirmative action more than black. Like, no. Like when you look at black women who, flocked to the colleges and universities after this affirmative action thing was implemented, a lot of black women got into colleges that a lot of them had no business being in because they weren't up to par as far as their education is concerned to even be in these institutions, a lot of them. And so a lot of black women did benefit from affirmative action in terms of being able to get into certain schools. A lot of these women were pushed through the system, were pushed through the education system, and they came out on the other side with degrees and became social workers and all sorts of other things. And so, but the fact of the matter is, when you look at the overall state of Black America in terms of how Black folks identify, what they complain about, all the things, it is true. And then not only that, if you look at the statistical data and the fact that Black people lag as a group behind every other group significantly by leaps and bounds, the fact of the matter is, affirmative action hasn't helped anything at all. And this is the thing about these policies, that these people implement. Thomas Sowell calls it the vision of the anointed. These people, they have all these grand ideas, and these ideas are going to fix this and fix that. And it doesn't. In fact, their ideas make things worse because you can't artificially incline people to get better. You can't do that. Like, people have to make the personal decision to get better and to do better. And that decision has to be done by conventional means, not by artificial means. The Bible says if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat. And so if you want to eat, you have to work. Yet if you want to eat, you have to work. That's conventional. Artificial means get rich quick. Artificial means cut corners. Artificial means some government policy that, is supposed to make it easier for you. Conventional means doing it the right way. And so again, all political policy does is present an artificial way to make people's lives better. And what happens 10 times out of 10 is, on the whole, it makes things worse because you're trying to hack life. You're trying to finesse and maneuver and manipulate reality so as to get a desired outcome. And it just doesn't work that way. On the whole, it's going to have a more negative effect than a positive effect.
Why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic abilities,
desire
skills.
to go, desire to.
I mean, zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more Black people?
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance?
The question was a good one. Why do Black people, what did he say? He said, why do Black people experience trauma? Why aren't they doing better in the economy and across the board? This is a perfect opportunity to answer the question with what? The truth. Culture, character. Black culture is a death culture. Black culture is an unproductive culture. Black culture is a backwards, dysfunctional culture that produces poor character. And to the extent that you have poor character, you're not going to do great in life. That's the answer. What answer do they give? What answer does the average Black Republican give? Well, the Democrats policy did it. Like, no, character. Welfare is available to everybody. There is no skin restriction to welfare. Everybody has the ability to get welfare if they make under a certain income. Everybody. And so if welfare is available to everybody, you don't get to give the answer that is because of the welfare that Black people are lagging behind other groups when it comes to, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to jobs and so on and so forth. You don't get to give that as an answer. Try again. The answer is character. That's the answer. Some cultures produce good character. Some cultures produce not so good culture. Let me try that again. Some characters produce good character. Some cultures produce not so good character. Black culture just so happens to not produce good character. It just is what it is. There, I said it. And so, the heck is that? You gonna stop? 1 second, guys. All right, there it goes. But yeah, it's all about character. It just is. I mean, you can blame the Democrat, you can blame the Republican, you can blame the politician, you can blame the media, the social media, you can blame the Jews, you can blame the Marxists, you can blame whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, it's on you. It's on you. You have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. I come from a lower middle class family. Didn't make great grades in school. I did great on tests. I can ace a test like no other. But when it came to schoolwork and homework, I just wasn't interested. And so by the way that I was going, I could have very easily ended up, not being the successful person I am today. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to fail. I know what it's like to fail to reach goals and so on and so forth. I know what that's like. I know what that's like. I know what success feels like. I know what failure feels like. And that's good. That's good for character building. That's good for production, being a productive person. If I pledge my allegiance to Black culture, or at least what the entertainment industry says Black culture is, if I pledge my allegiance to that, then I wouldn't be the man I am today. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't. And you know what I mean? There are some people who have gotten rich off of Black culture. Most of them are celebrities. Most of them, but by and large, most people who pledge their allegiance to Black culture will not be successful. They just won't. Not even by, moderate standards of what success is. I know people who have, modest jobs where the husband does pest control, and the wife is a stay-at-home mom, or she's a RN or something like that, and they make pretty good money and live in a pretty good neighborhood and things of this nature. Black couples and white couples alike. They decided to live a decent life, a quiet life, and they don't succumb to or subscribe to Black culture. But to the extent that you decide to subscribe to Black culture, to the extent that you decide to subscribe to and pledge your allegiance to Black culture and all the relics therein, it's not going to bode over well for you in life. It's just not. It just isn't. If you live your life according to everything that you hear in your average rap song, if you decide to, even your conscious rap, your Kendrick Lamar's and all these other people, if you decide to adopt the philosophy in these lyrics, it's not going to go over well for you in real life. A lot of the music that you hear anyway is from artists. Artists think differently. Artists don't think in terms of how can I yield the most production in society. Artists deal in the abstract. Artists live in some kind of fairy tale land. Think of the who did the song Imagine? Imagine all the people. Who did that one? One of the Beatles, right? Like, again, abstract nonsense. That song is pagan. That song is anti-Christian. That song is nonsense. A lot of y'all like it though, for some reason. It's a communist song. But again, it's like if you adopt your culture, your ideology from things you see in movies and television and hear in songs like modern black culture has, it's just not going to go over well for you at all. And so it is the culture that leads to the quote unquote disparities that we see among black folks. It is the culture. It's not government policy.
Distance programs like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
It
a
is
look
relevant.
at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance.
Okay, so that's enough. I mean, again, more policy, more government did this, government did that. There's no personal responsibility. You've heard enough of it, and so have I. So let's bring in some of the word from God. Some of that word. Let's bring in some of that. Because we need to end this thing on a good note. Let's see. Let's try Isaiah 8. What does the word have to say? So Isaiah 8 reads as follows. Let me see if I can't blow that up bigger. Here we go. A call to trust the Lord. Let me blow this up because I still can't see it. All right, it says, the Lord has given me a strong warning not to think like everyone else does. He said, don't call everything a conspiracy like they do, and don't live in dread of what frightens them. Make the Lord of hosts holy in your life. He is the one you should fear. He is the one who should make you tremble. He will keep you safe. So that's our scripture for today. As it pertains to everything that the right and the left says should fear, should cause fear, should, be the thing that causes us to get mad and angry and upset and bitter. You know what I mean? All the Democrats did this, and that's a conspiracy, and the Republicans did this, and the Dixiecrats and the Southern strategy and all the things. What does the words of God says? The word of God says, don't call everything a conspiracy like they do, and don't live in dread of what frightens them. Make the Lord of hosts holy in your life. He is the one you should fear. He is the one who should make you tremble. He will keep you safe. So you think I care about what a Democrat did? You think I care about what Margaret Sanger said? You think I care about any of that? No. Does that mean it didn't happen? No, it doesn't. A lot of the stuff did happen. But I'm not going to live my life worrying about what a Democrat or a conservative or anybody else for that matter did, because I am called to be in this world, but not of this world. And when I live in the world, I move in such a way that these kinds of things don't affect me. Like if Joe Biden passed a policy that heightened the welfare state and promises X amount of dollars for families that do, this or that thing, I'm not going to go for it. Why? Because I have character that is built by the scriptures, that is built by the Holy Spirit. I live in allegiance to God, not in allegiance to Joe Biden, not in allegiance to black culture, not in allegiance to the world. That's what the verse is saying. Don't live in such a way, of things that frighten other people. And that goes for black Republicans too. You just sat up there and heard all these black Republicans talking about all the policies and the Democrats did this and the Democrats did that. It's like, okay, I mean, should I be surprised that the world does what the world does? Should I be surprised that the world does what the world does? And when they talk, these black Republicans, they do so under the presumption that the Republicans have done it right this whole time. They've been they've been the good guys in this whole scenario. They've always worn the white hat. When again, Republicans' role in all this has been that of being gullible or that of being complicit. The two-party system is an illusion of choice, when in reality, it's a uniparty where the politicians are all on the same side. They're all on the same team. It's going to look different at the grassroots level. But the people who are the ideologues, the Republican ideologues, the Democrat ideologues, they're none the wiser. They genuinely believe in the talking points and the rhetoric of the respective parties. They believe it. They're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're, and young and impressionable. Many of them. Some of them not so young, but they're impressionable minds, and so they believe that the politicians are going to get into office and do exactly what they said they're going to do. So there's still a lot of naivete there, and people want to root for a team. Like, they want to root for a side. I mean, people want to be team R or team D, team red or team blue. Like, people want a side. But the fact of the matter is, Republicanism left to itself is secular in nature. You might get some politicians that mention God or mention the scriptures every now and then, but it's secular in nature. It's not going to have all the answers. Certainly not like the Bible is going to have all the answers, or like Christ has all the answers. Christ is the answer. Democrats certainly is a secular institution. So both are secular. I have friends who have gone on Fox News and they've told me that, they can't mention anything about Jesus. They can't say the name Jesus on Fox News. And Fox News is supposed to be and this is before it was bought out, right? This is when they still had Tucker Carlson on there, and they still had, even before Tucker Carlson. Yeah, Fox News has always been this way. Even when y'all still thought that they were a Republican or conservative news outlet. You can't say the name Jesus, right? So this is the way that they've always been. And a lot of your Republican institutions or groups or whatever, like when the higher you get in terms of like the national, the RNC, is going to become less and less and less. You're going to hear the name of Christ less and less and less. You're going to hear it at your local Republican meeting, at the precinct level or at the county level. You're going to hear, and they might even do prayer and stuff before the groups, before the meetings and things of this nature. But again, the higher you get, the less you'll hear that. They might pledge allegiance and stuff the higher you get. And again, like, don't be fooled by the facade. They still pray before, the House sessions and the Senate sessions. They have the House chaplain or the Senate chaplain come in and they pray over the proceedings for the day and the things of this nature. And but don't be fooled by the facade of it all, because a lot of these chaplains are, women or, LGBT or, black men who subscribe to liberation theology, which is heretical. All the things. So it's like, God only hears the prayers of the righteous, and the righteous are born again of Christ. And so if you're not born again of Christ, your prayer doesn't mean anything. That might be a theological debate or discussion to get into. Does Christ hear the prayers of the unrighteous or those who are born again? According to the Bible, he doesn't. According to the Bible, he doesn't. A lot of people look at Jesus, or a lot of people look at God as a kind of genie in the bottle, and all I have to do is ask him for something and he'll give it to me, even though I reject him, I reject his word, I reject Christ. A lot of people look at him like that. And I'm convinced that the only way God hears the prayer of someone who is currently unrighteous because they haven't been born again, the only way that God hears the prayers of those is if they are praying for him to come into their heart. That's the only way I think that that he would hear the prayers of the unrighteous. However, I do also believe that God is constantly calling the unrighteous to himself. And so he's definitely present. God is omnipresent. He's everywhere all at once. So God's omnipresent. He's constantly calling you to repent and to come to him because he loves you. And he wants for you to be a part of his remnant. He wants you to spend eternity with him instead of eternity away from him. So you know, that's a testament of God's love for you, the fact that he put on flesh and that he came down and took on your punishment, that you don't have to spend eternity apart from him. Like that's a true a gift of a loving God. And Jesus is the only name given under heaven by which man can be saved. There is no other way to God, not Allah, not Hinduism, not any so-called, what's up? Not any so-called religion. Only Christ is the way. So, but anyway, I'm going to end it there, and I'm not sure when I'll be back. Probably Wednesday. But anyway, I love you all, and let's see here. Oh yeah, did I have any super chats before I go? Let me see if I have any super chats before I go. We got one here from Tira Falson. Says, thank you for your work. I've added a comment requesting a reading list for further research. I'm supposed to be adding a reading list on my website, chadojackson.com. So that's actually forthcoming. So be on the lookout for that. In fact, I'll make an announcement when I do go live with that. So yeah, I'll put that up soon, because there's been a lot of people asking for citations and reading lists and things of this nature. So I'll definitely be putting that together for you all. Anyway, had a lot of fun with this. I hope you all have a good rest of your week. Happy Monday. If you're a homeschool mother, God bless you. If you're a working man, God bless you. If you are a child of homeschool parents, make sure that you are listening to your parents and being obedient and honoring them and all that good stuff. So, love y'all. Peace.